One at a time, and we'll get the job done. Y'all know what to say. On three. 1, 2, 3.
And the home of the Jets.
Mr. Jet Central. We finally have a new head coach, a new general manager, a new direction. How are you feeling, my friend?
Dude, I'm pumped. I'm so excited. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Aaron Glenn hasn't won a game. We don't know how he handles adversity. We don't know how he, goes throughout the course of the season, how he attacks practice, how he attacks game preparation. But he's been in charge for what, officially he's been in charge for like a week. But, since we've heard from him, he's addressed fans, he's addressed, members of the New York Jets. He's been in communication with a couple guys, met with the media. It's been like a day or two. Mm-hmm. And I think he absolutely smashed it out of the park.
No, I definitely think so too. So let's go back to the beginning and the general manager search, which was thorough. A lot of rumors. Everybody wanted Berganzi and Greenberg and all this guy. And the guy we got was a person nobody really mentioned at all until you had the three finalists, which was Brown, Newmark, and Muji. And now you get him. And you look at his resume, okay, with the Broncos, climbed the ladder, got the backing of Sean Payton, extensive pro personnel background. You definitely got the scouting aspect you're looking for. What are your thoughts of him? Or are you surprised they actually went with him?
So I thought it was going to be Newmark. When he was brought in first for the second interview with Aaron Glenn and they're in the building at the same time, I figured, two guys from the Lions, two guys that want to work with each other. I thought, it was going to get done, and never did. But Mougey's actually someone who I wanted to bring back in my, the Jets obviously interviewed the 15 or 6, I think it was just 15 GMs and then 16 coaches in total. And out of the 15 GM candidates, Mougey was one of the guys who I wanted to bring back. So he was in like my final 6 because I think it's, he's coming over from the Denver Broncos. And yeah, the Broncos haven't been this like ultra successful team over the past decade. It's really been since 2015. They won the Super Bowl, but really everything beyond that, there's been a lot of losing with the Fangio years, the Vance Joseph years, lots of swing and misses with the Hackett years, right?
Hackett years, yep.
But I think the Denver Broncos are pretty tightly knit, if that makes sense. It feels like the Broncos are like a fraternity, one of the more popular, more valuable franchises in the National Football League. And for someone to survive ownership changes, for someone to constantly be working his way up through the totem pole, to reach assistant general manager at 39 years old with the Denver Broncos, to work hand in hand with George Payton and Sean Payton. Yeah. I mean, I think that says something. And, you look at where Denver's at right now, it's a team that just completely crushed the whole draft and develop philosophy, right? I mean, think about not every good player, but the majority of the Broncos roster. Like who's a player that pops in your head? Patrick King, they drafted him. Bo Nix, they drafted him. Benito drafted him, right? All of these different guys, they're, it's the draft and develop mentality, draft and develop philosophy. Cortland Sutton, Garrett Bowles, Williams at running. Like there's it just feels like an endless list. And that's exactly what I want the Jets to become, right? Which is just a well-oiled machine, a well-ran team, a team that has a vision, a team that knows who they are. And, they can just hit every offseason with an exact plan, a clear-cut plan, and, move forward that way, as opposed to grasping for straws or signing free agents with hopes that they can, like, turn around the roster or turn around the fortune of the team.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. You nailed it all. That was well said. You nailed the two things is, first, his ties to Sean Payton, which are enormous, especially with Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn and Sean Payton very close. It's that whole Parcells tree, that whole Parcells community. So he's a part of that. Also, having the ability to help identify that young quarterback who took off this year, which is going to be the same spot the Jets are in too, man. Like Jets are, we'll talk about Rodgers later on, but ideally, you got to find a young quarterback and your franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. He was a part of finding that with the Broncos, which is huge, man. It's a biggest part of this GM job right now is finding your quarterback, developing the young players, and because you can't always rely on free agency. So you feel a little bit better about that. But I think that Sean Payton thing, it plays a big role in this, man, having his backing, especially the ties to Parcells.
Yeah, dude, definitely. And, I don't want to overhype Darren Muji. It's not like he's just giving George Payton the list. Hey, these are the players that we need to draft. These are, this is how we're going to develop these guys. Obviously, right. Sean Payton has a massive role on the field, overall philosophy. I mean, he's just done it for such a long time, such a veteran coach. And then of course, George Payton is the general manager. So we always have this question with the first year general managers, how much of an impact do they actually have? But every great coach, every great executive was hired for the first time eventually. And based off the track record, I like what I see.
Now, in terms of the front office, do you want to see him hire some, veteran executives, some senior executives that have been around the NFL? Maybe it could be former general managers. Like ideally for me, it's like I want that director of football operations between, Mougey and Woody Johnson. I want the guy overseeing everybody. But do you want to see him add guys to the staff? Because remember, we lost Hogan, we lost Alexander. They were never replaced. You got a lot of open spots in this front office. I personally don't want to see a lot of first-timers. I don't want to see a first-time cap guy, first-time this. Like, I want some experience brought in here because you have some pivotal contract negotiations that are coming up with, Garrett Wilson, Sauce, Jermaine Jones. You have a lot of contracts that work out and maybe restructuring Aaron Rodgers as well. So is it pivotal to have that senior executive that's been around the NFL for 10, 20 years already?
I think so, man. Where do you stand on the whole thing?
Absolutely, dude. Listen, man. You can say what you want about Tannenbaum and Spielman. If one of them want to stay here and play a role in this organization, I have no problem with that. Just to give him, he's only 39 years old, so it's like he's a first-time guy, and let him he's gonna have full say, but give him a little guidance or give him some pushback. Hey, you know what? Maybe you can go this way, or in salary cap negotiations, think guide him a little bit. Just I don't know. That's my personal. I want that safety blanket, that little assurance that it's just he's not just flying by the seat of his pants. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we also got the word from Woody Johnson that both Glenn and Muji are going to be sitting on the same level, reporting up to the top.
Yep.
Which is, I would say, not ideal. I mean, it is what it is. There's something that we can do now to change it.
Yep.
But having that president of football operations, I mean, you talked about Tannenbaum, Spielman. I would even argue Chris Spielman. I think that's pretty unlikely at this point, just because we're already kind of in the mix. The Lions have just been completely gutted with the amount of coaches and everything that they've lost this cycle. And it's not just Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. It's, some of the guys. Randall L has been taken by Chicago. JT Barrett, their quarterback coach, taken by Chicago. Like there's just a lot of different moving parts of the Lions right now. They got John Morton, Jets OC, stepping in, which is pretty cool. I hope he does well. But like you said, man, I think it's important to have. Well, I guess when you're talking about a front office, the more experience, the better. I don't think the more experience would hurt you in any way, especially if that isn't the guy with the final say. But I think, for example, like you mentioned, Tannenbaum. If you add him to the mix and you kind of just add that buffer, or he's the bridge that connects the Glenn Muji pairing to Woody Johnson, it makes a lot of sense because, you could run into a number of issues when you have a general manager and a head coach on the same level reporting to one owner, and that owner is been labeled as quick trigger, rash, someone who is fast to make decisions. You could run into a number of issues in the future.
And that's my concern. It's like you have an inexperienced front office, which is like, all right, listen, I'm not hating on it. We don't know who he is. We have no idea what he is. We're hoping that based on his resume and his pedigree and his background, he'll be solid. I like them giving some assistance. The hierarchy, if I'm being completely transparent, bothers me a little bit. But when you hire Aaron Glenn first, you can't hire him first. Okay, the next guy we're going to hire, you're reporting to him. It's like ass backwards. You're kind of putting the cart before the horse. So you can't do that. So you have them on the same level, which, like you said before, it's not ideal. Then my question is, okay, if Aaron Glenn in the first round wants a defensive tackle, Mougey says, I want the wide receiver. Who's breaking the tie? Woody Johnson? Like, how's that managed? And that's that power structure, the hierarchy that kind of bothers me a little bit. And I have this funny feeling based on the way they talked yesterday and based on the way he's handling it. I think Aaron Glenn's got a lot of power here. And that, to me, it comes with a lot of risk. I love him as a former player. I like the way he presented himself yesterday. But first-time head coach having that kind of power, that kind of say, kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable right now looking at it just objectively.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different scenarios that you can bring up with the whole GM and head coach sitting on the same level. You know, one of which is, well, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head, right, in the draft. If Glenn wants a defensive player and Muji wants an offensive player, or vice versa, however it works, who gets the final call?
Yep.
Will there be kind of that, I don't want to use the word subconscious, but that would you have maybe that that disdain build up? Like, for example, if you're Aaron Glenn and Muji's going with the guy that he wants, but you, as the powerful head coach that just had a 5-year contract, you're thinking someone else. You know, how does that really work? You know, what if you're the New York Jets this offseason or maybe in 2026 and you have, let's just say, $20 million suspended free agency, and Aaron Glenn is like, I want this player because we need this player very, very badly. Yep. And Muji's just like, I personally don't really like that player all that much from an evaluation standpoint. 100%. I think we can move on. Or, I really like the player that we drafted in the 4th round. I love his potential. And Aaron Glenn can say, well, he's not where we're at. We need him to be here, and he's right here. And like that, it's just unacceptable at this point. Can we do something? If Muji and Glenn are on the same page, who gets that final call? That's why it's really important to have that working relationship and kind of that prior knowledge of each other. You don't want to have two guys just button heads, which we saw with John Idzik and Rex Ryan.
Yeah, and the other kind of thought I have, I'm always skeptical, man. I always think of like, all right, how can this go wrong? How can it go right? But the one way it seems like the way this current setup is, it almost allows the GM to get fired without getting rid of the head coach. That's kind of the way I look at it. Like just exactly what you mentioned. I always think back to Parcells where, I want to shop for the groceries, that kind of stuff. Like, all right, Aaron Glenn could be like, listen, it's been 2 years. I'm not getting the guys I want. I can't win like this. This guy's got to go. And the hierarchy, there's no impact to it. It just replace the general manager, right? That's if you're reporting to him, it's probably a little more different because the general manager could fire you. If you're on an equal playing field, to me, it's like, that's why I have this feeling that Aaron Glenn may have a lot of power, dude. Where he's like, you know what? This ain't working out. He's got to go. Everybody believes in me. They don't believe in you. And what do you think about that perspective?
I mean, you could always spin it like that, right? Yeah, Larry, resentment is the word that I was looking for. Thank you. Admittedly, it does feel weird talking about the potential firing of Darren Muji.
I'm just saying, if you look at the hierarchy, this is the initial setup of how you're doing it and the power. And like, to me, it's like I'm trying to figure out how much power Glenn has, and the way it's set up, it actually says he probably does have a lot of power here. Where it's like, hey, man, my way, the highway, and he probably can influence more personnel decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be. They have to work well together. And to be honest with you, I don't see Tannenbaum and Spielman pairing these two guys if they didn't think that they would work together. Like I look at a structure like San Francisco where Kyle Shanahan has a massive say, and then you have John Lynch.
He's earned it though.
Yeah, but when Shanahan first took over, he was a first-time coach and longtime coordinator, son of Mike Shanahan, and lost actually a ton of games. And obviously Lynch was in the mix as well, but you don't feel like it's Lynch's decisions and he's telling Kyle, no, you coach these players. I'm the smartest man in the room. It does feel very 50-50, very collaborative in many different ways, both in free agency and the draft. I think maybe you could run into, or like if you look back at how San Francisco has maybe handled contracts, that's maybe been a bit of an issue, but San Francisco is kind of like the weird outlier where it feels like they just have unlimited cash. They could sign all these big deals, Debo, Ayuk, Trent, all these different guys, because they're paying Brock Purdy like $1 million, I think less than $1 million a season. But that's really the only type of like how should I say this? Maybe rigid conversations or rigid press conferences between those two, like in San Francisco. But that's maybe the model that I would try to go after if I'm the Jets, right? two guys working hand in hand. They have to be in lockstep. It's like a 3-legged race.
Yeah.
Like that you see it at, the park and different events and stuff. You can't have one guy dragging behind and the other guy trying to move forward. You can't have them going in different directions. They have to be going together.
No, I agree. So then you have, we discussed Muji, and then you get the head coach where, heading into the search, everybody wanted that proven guy. You don't want the first timer, but then slowly but surely, all the proven guys weren't available. McCarthy wasn't going to come here. Pete Carroll wasn't coming here. They interviewed Brian Flores. He didn't get a job anywhere as of now. In Kingsbury doesn't even want to take an interview. He's happy in Washington. So a lot of names everybody coveted. Monken wasn't going to come here. So it's like, all right, we had to kind of pivot a little bit, and then the cast of characters kind of changed. And it seemed like they narrowed down to Aaron Glenn pretty quickly. And they had conviction with him. This was their guy from the start. We all know the story. Former first-round pick, played Pro Bowl. He climbed the ranks, came here as a scout, worked his way all the way up, has the backing of Bill Parcells. And, it's like it wasn't my preferred choice. But once he came in the building, I'm like, all right, let's see what he brings to the table. And I think based on all the interviews we saw with the Lions and his personality, you had a feeling he was going to come here with some conviction. And I'm telling you, dude, yesterday you can't win a press conference. Yesterday, to me, was really, really important for him because he set the tone. Set the tone early with the media, with the fans. He sent a message to his locker room. Like, there's no more BS here. This is going to be, we are changing the whole narrative here. We're getting right. It was like accountability, discipline, respect, and no nonsense. And there's no one player above the team when referring to Rodgers, which I thought was perfect because this has been a rudderless ship. They have no leadership. They have no direction. They don't know what they're doing. All they know is losing, how to lose and how to justify it. And he realizes that. The one thing is he's been here when it's been bad, right? Like he knows how bad it gets here, how bad it is now. And he saw how to change it with Parcells when they went in 98, when they turned it all the way around. Even 97, they turned it around. So I think yesterday was a slam dunk for him. I know it means nothing, wins and losses, but in terms of setting the tone and getting his message across to start, listen, here's how we do business here. I thought he did really well yesterday.
Yeah, dude. I mean, he's been here for a day. Like, what's the expectation to file a request to the NFL to somehow get put into the championship? Like, there's only one thing that you can do: have the press conference. Yep. And I thought he hit a home run. Yep. I mean, he got me fired up. He got fans fired up. We had ex-players actually at the press conference. Got some weird questions, handled them beautifully. He got to put the media in their place as far as the whole Rodgers talk. By the way, I loved how Aaron Glenn brought up Rodgers in the intro presser. Like, no, we're not gonna, because we saw it with Saleh, beat around the bush. I don't know if you remember the mandatory minicamp, Egypt thing, right? Yep. When Saleh first broke that news, it was like walking on eggshells. You could feel like something was about to happen in that presser. Yep. During that time, it was like, oh my God, like what's going to happen? Then it's not excused. He's fined. It was just like this big story with Aaron Glenn. He didn't even have to be asked about it. He was just like, in regard, I forget the exact verbiage, but he brought it up in regards to Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be talked about. Me and Darren, we're going to go back, watch the games, and we're going to make a decision. That's the end of it. And then when he was asked about it, try to get more details and whatnot. He's like, I told you what I told you. I have conviction in what I'm saying here. And this is where I stand. You're not going to, I don't want to say bully him, but you're not going to twist words and try to, grasp for small details that you could run with different stories. So it might not be the best for video ideas and content and stuff without, with Glenn kind of being or running a tighter ship, but that's what I want. You look at the well-ran organizations, do the Steelers, do the Packers, do the Lions, do the Bills, do the Ravens, do they have constant leaks coming out? Do they have constant, hit pieces by the media? No, it's just a different vibe. And one thing I was going to say before, and you were kind of hinting at it, like, it almost feels like Aaron Glenn, it almost kind of feels like he's like a Jets fan. He goes up there, and of course he's, obviously pumped up to get the job. First time head coach, drafted by the team. We all know the story, like you said, but it sounded like he addressed some of the problems. Like he knows Aaron Rodgers, this whole thing is a problem. He knows the losing is a problem. He knows the accountability is a problem. Like he's approaching it like he's just watched all your videos throughout the course of the season. Like he knows exactly where the issues are, and he addressed them. So, I think there's only so much you can do on day one of meeting the media, having this big public thing. And in that first day, I didn't really think that he could do any better.
No, I think he did a great job. And the key things he said, and I like how he pushed back to the media, even when the guy's like, well, you and Parcells are tight. He's like, I'm not Parcells. I'm Aaron Glenn. Like, let's be clear. This is my vision. This is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. Now, he's getting guided by Parcells and getting all kinds of insight and feedback and stuff like that. But like, he's his own man. And he looked prepared. He looked like he knew exactly what he wanted to do, when he wanted to do it, how he wanted to say it. And I appreciate it, because for so long, we have coaches that did talk in circles, cliches, nonsense, and you can see right through the BS. And obviously it's only intro presser, but he had like firm grasp of what had to be controlled and what the message had to be. And he stuck to it the entire time, even like on radio interviews.
Yeah. And he wasn't a jerk. You have these coaches that step in, like Greg Schiano over in Tampa way back when, just come in and it's just my way or the highway. This is how we're going to do things. No sort of creativity, no sort of creative input. Nope. This is how I'm doing it. I didn't get that sense from Aaron Glenn. He was stern. I thought he sounded disciplined. He sounded like he had conviction. I loved how he spoke from the heart. I think that, and what's cool is that's just to the media. That's to the fans. That's to the world. Like in a public press conference setting, what's going to be said to players behind closed doors? Those relationships, those bonds that the coach, head coach of the team, who is an ex-player who's freaking great with this team, that respect level, the second these players walk in the door, it's going to be there. And it's not a shot at Saleh or Gase or Bowles or whoever. I just think it's a luxury that Aaron Glenn has. It's kind of like an extra feather in his cap.
Yeah, I mean, you're leading a season where Breece Hall said it's one of the worst years of his life. Garrett Wilson's completely miserable. These guys are just tired of losing, tired of the nonsense and all the fanfare and all the media BS. And you have a guy here saying he spoke, and they all watched it. They may not have commented or quoted anything, but they all sat and watched, like, all right, let's see what this coach has to say. And then you're like, all right. And my favorite thing was the whole thing about accountability. And the way he broke it down and explained it, he's like, these players want to know what they're responsible for. What's demanded of them. If they know that and then they don't do that, then you hold them accountable. But the whole thing is you got to teach them, make them understand what our roles and responsibilities are every day. Tell them that. Let them know what it is. And then if things don't happen, then we change them. Like that kind of stuff. Like Saleh tried to be everybody's friend. One big happy family, players this, players that. I'm not here to motivate nobody. You sense like this is the perfect guy to have to offset all of that. Like, all right, you had your fun family party now. Now that's over. Now things are going to get serious because we got to change our ways because we keep losing. I think he can get everybody's attention. I think early on, he's going to earn their respect just based on his message and on his plan. And then you got to carry it out. Like, then you got to, bring in new players and have your great training camp and all this other stuff. But I think he probably got a lot of respect. And you just saw it even like players on social media from other teams saying, all right, coach, like, this is some pretty good stuff here. Like, I can respect that. So I think it's a really good start, to be honest with you.
Me too. I think like you can be a player's coach. Like what is a player's coach? Someone that, maybe is it doesn't really fit the prototypical head coach. I'm the leader. I'm the teacher. I'm in charge. My way or the highway. You listen to me. It kind of goes a little bit beyond that. I don't want to say they're friends, right? But there's kind of more of that friendlier kind of approach to it. That when I think of a player's coach, that's what I think of. I think of a Rex Ryan. I think of someone who players look towards and say, hey, you know what? Like I like this guy. I can go have a beer with him. Yep. And I think because of that, they listen. They're not going to be, and not to lump every player into the same bucket here. Obviously, everyone's different, but there's more of that open-mindedness when it comes to being coached hard. Like, I know this guy doesn't mean it if he's taking, if he's coaching me hard in practice, because he just wants what's best for me. But I think with Aaron Glenn, because sometimes, you have a guy like Robert Saleh where it goes overboard, right? Where you just don't have the accountability. You don't have the discipline. But with Aaron, like, you could be a player's coach, but have that standard. Dan Campbell, Harbaugh is he's a great example. Jim Harbaugh is a good example of that. John Harbaugh, maybe not so much, but Jim Harbaugh, you listen to how players talk about him. They love him, right? Players coach. They can, talk about things other than football. It seems like there's like a real relationship there. but Harbaugh runs, he runs his franchise exactly how he wants to run it. And there's that sense of, hey, we all got to do our job here. And if we don't live up to it, there's going to be some repercussions.
Yeah, and I think he's got a couple things to his advantage. He's a former player, so he's actually played the game at a very high level. He played in this market. He saw the bad, he saw the good. So that's huge, right? Like, that's like, he can say, listen, I know where you are. Like, I know you want to make a lot of money. I know it. Like, that's a huge thing. Like, that speaks to them right off the bat, where like you can relate to it. It's like, I can't talk about it. I did it already. I know what I'm talking about, right? I think that message goes thing. Now, the other thing I think was really good was that he's not calling plays. And we talked about that, I think that last week, where it's like, all right, he's a defensive mind. He's going to call plays. We both said, I hope he doesn't do that. And he came out and said, absolutely not. I'm going to hire 2 very good coordinators. They're going to call the plays. I want to be the best head coach I can be. And I'm like, perfect. That's what you want. You want the CEO guy, but not a CEO guy just entitled. Like, be actively involved in special teams. Be actively involved in the offense. Like, have a say in there. Know what's going on. Be able to speak about it. Not, I got to watch the tape and lie to us and know that you're completely in over your head. Like, I like that he's going to have a more hands-on approach where he can oversee everything. And that's what this team needs, because I don't want him getting lost in all the details of defense and losing focus of the offense, which has been needing help for a decade.
Yeah, well, that's why it's really important to hire a veteran defensive. Well, you could argue veterans for both coordinator positions, but in the name that gets thrown around, or that has been getting thrown around, I think Connor Hughes was the first to report it, but it's been Steve Wilks.
Yes.
And I've never really been a big Steve Wilks guy, but he checks the box for me, where defensive coordinator is not going to be too overwhelmed. Oh my God, I have to call plays. I'm going to be in New York. He's been in tons of different locker rooms. He's always been kind of more of that stricter coach. Has experience running a lot of man coverage for down linemen. So you kind of have that that similarity right off the bat, right? If Aaron Glenn wants to come in and run that style of defense that he did last couple seasons in Detroit, Steve Wilks can come in and say, I got you, man. Like, this is how we're going to do things. Yep. And all I got to do is focus on the defensive side of the football. I think that would be a great hire, and then Aaron Glenn can focus and kind of truly embody the CEO style, not like Saleh, and this is not like, I don't want it to sound like I'm taking personal shots at Saleh, because I think Saleh sounds, just watching his press conferences, watching everything, like the interviews and everything like that last 4 years, he seems like a really likable guy. Like,
he's a used car salesman. Who are we kidding?
Dude, he's bro. Saleh's a good guy, man. I hope he does.
He's a good guy. A terrible coach, terrible head coach. He's a good guy, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't say terrible.
I could play golf with him. I don't want to be a football coach, though. That's like, I think he's a nice guy. I think it was just, he was in over his head. It was just too big for him, and he had too much newness around him and too much chaos around him. He couldn't adjust to it. But like a defensive coordinator, good for him. Take that job. But I think I think he had no clues going on with the offense. He literally watched the offense fall apart and didn't make any changes. Play in and play out, adjustments, everything like that, where I'm hoping Glenn does something different with that. But now, I think with the offensive coordinator, we're probably going to disagree here. I really want a veteran offensive coordinator. I do. I don't want a first-time play caller. I know the names that are out there, but it makes me uncomfortable, because I fear that we're going to have, gotta get to the quarterback next, but I just want an offense that we can implement for the next 3 or 4 years, not changing every year. What are your thoughts on the offensive coordinator? We all know the names that are out there, but what is your preference right now?
Yeah, so just to quickly respond to Cat 93 here, not a Steve Wilks guy. I got to hear this. So it's always just kind of been. I feel like his defenses have never excelled in a specific category. In a specific category, and there are things I do like about Steve Wilks. I think it would actually be a great hire for the Jets, for the reasons that we were just talking about. Someone who could call plays, someone who could run a defense similar to what Aaron Glenn wants, to take pressure off of Glenn's shoulders. But, you take a look at consistent run defense. It's always been a question. It was a massive question for the Jets last season. It always seems to be an issue with the Steve Wilks defense. Year after year after year, it's just stopping the run. It's just been for whatever reason, it's been very difficult. Now, of course, obviously personnel plays a big part of that, but you could also look at all the jobs that he's had throughout the years, where at the end of that year, it just doesn't work out and the team just wants to move on, right? Yeah. One and done in Arizona. That rarely happens, but one and done in Arizona as head coach. You could talk about, I saw the comment before, him being let go after the Niners kind of implosion late into the postseason in the Super Bowl. Although necessarily wasn't Steve Wilkes' fault, he was still let go. Didn't get brought back in Cleveland, so he was there, I believe, only for one season. He was at Missouri. The defense was horrible. Didn't get brought back there either. So the constant turnover where it's like year after year after year, I would personally like to see like a little bit more consistency with one spot, because I want to maybe know what's happening behind the scenes. Is he someone that maybe clashes with the head coach? Is that why he's not being, I mean, he did some good things as Carolina Panthers interim head coach, but wasn't brought back. So I don't know. I don't think he's the perfect coach. He's not a top 5 defensive mind to me, but he's definitely not a bad one. And he's definitely, I don't think he'd be a bad hire.
I mean, and you also got to figure in mind, Aaron Glenn will have his say to help him with the defense as well. If he sees things he doesn't like, he could probably cater it and tinker with it and be like, all right, let's fix this, let's fix that. But on the offense, it's where it gets interesting, because you're like, all right, now this is something where Rodgers returning or not, you need a whole new offense here, and you want to maximize the potential of these young superstars, which we haven't really done yet. So who are you looking for? Like, who's your preference? And then what do you think they end up with?
Well, I guess it kind of depends if that Wilkes news becomes official, because if we get the veteran, former head coach there, then I'm more open to the idea of having a younger offensive mind. I mean, if we go first year DC and a first year OC with a first year head coach and a first year GM, we could be in for her. That sounds like a lot like the Saleh, when he first took over. Yeah. Even though JD was here for a little bit before that, but that is a lot of new.
I hate it.
Like that's I'm gonna expect a lot of speed bumps. But if we get Wilkes on the defensive side, I still prefer the veteran mind on the offensive side, because for the same reasons, right? This is a big job. The offense has been a problem. We don't know what's happening at quarterback. We don't know what's happening with starting tight ends, starting right tackle, wide receiver depth. Does Devontae Adams get traded? I think we have a lot of things going for this offense with 4/5 of the offensive line locked in, ready to go. The running backs, you can always rely on those guys. We have tons of young, hungry backs. I mean, that's just such a luxury, right, in and of itself, right? Because when things get rocky, when things are aren't going well, you can always rely on running the football if you have that offensive line production up front. But I don't want someone to if I had the choice between two candidates, and I felt the same way about both candidates, but one had experience and one didn't, I would go with the experienced guy. I think I think it's tough for a young offensive coordinator to get put in that role and say, install the offense for the first time. Like, this is because Aaron Glenn's a defensive guy.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's not like Dan Campbell in Detroit, where he's an offensive guy and he kind of has that oversight and he knows what Ben Johnson is doing. He understands everything that comes with what Ben Johnson did last season. He could take those things. And, I don't want to lump Glenn and Saleh and Bowles and Rex, for that matter, into the same bucket and just say, well, they're useless on the offensive side of the football.
But just
maybe Aaron Glenn is not maybe Aaron Glenn actually does contribute to the offensive side. Like that's such a huge part in this as well. Because we've seen coaches do that time and time and time again, where they come up in one side of the ball, or maybe they're a special teams guy and they actually contribute. They're a part of every facet. But again, I think to install an offense for the first time, to potentially develop a quarterback for the first time by yourself, as you're the head guy in charge, calling plays, practicing, you can be like one of the young up and comers, like a Joe Brady, right? What happened when Joe Brady took over in Carolina? You had veteran players pushing back. We didn't even practice 2 minutes. We didn't even practice red zone offense. Yep. The play designs, it's creative. Yeah, we're picking up yards in the game, but in critical situations, we're not living up to where we should be because we're simply not practicing them. So it's just little things like that. I bet you if you ask Joe Brady now, how the practices are in Buffalo, it's probably a lot different.
Yep.
So I think, with experience comes like a mitigated risk of negatives, if that makes sense. Yep. But it's also not to say that the experienced guy is automatically better than the young guy. Look at Ben Johnson. If the Lions kept Anthony Lynn, the offense, I'm sure, would look a lot different differently compared to making that swap, firing Lynn and promoting Johnson.
So who are some veteran OCs out there? I know John Morton went somewhere else. He went to the Lions, I think. So who are some veteran OCs out there that the Jets could consider? I know a lot of them aren't being mentioned. I know people are saying, "Go with Josh McCown." I don't think Josh McCown's going to leave. It'd be great if he did, but he's not an experienced play caller. So who, like Anthony Lynn was a guy we talked about last week, which is kind of intriguing. Who are some other guys that you would think about?
What one name I actually wanted to get your thoughts on, who the Jets actually interviewed for head coach, is Bobby Slowick, someone who's called plays, last couple seasons. I mean, he took 5 head coaching interviews last year, 1 this season.
Then got fired.
Yeah, and got fired. I don't know if you had, so I think a story, came out today that supposedly Slowick and Stroud didn't really have the best relationship. Stroud was frustrated. I mean, the entire offense regressed. Stroud got worse. The offensive line got worse. Even like Stroud's mechanics got worse. They got like super sloppy. I remember
that's what I was going to say. It's like you look at that's his like perfect position to be in. A young team on the rise with all these young playmakers and that quarterback blossoming, which would make him a superstar offensive coordinator to take on. And he actually went backwards to the point he got fired, which is not a good look because the Jets can be in the same spot where they're going to get that young quarterback, if not this year, next year. Is that who you want to put in your hands? Like, it's just, there's like a lot of red flags to that, man. And which is surprising it happened like that because everybody was really high on him.
Yeah. You know, and it kind of speaks to maybe what's happening behind the scenes in Houston because the offense, it was at least formidable. It wasn't like 32, 32, 31, 30, 29, 32 in like the major statistical ranks. It was kind of middle of the road.
Yep.
You know, it wasn't anything to write home about, obviously. But you know, I want Glenn to have the same approach. I want the best coach. If I interview, Engstrand from Detroit, who everyone's been talking about over like the last 24 hours, he seems to be like the hot candidate. Josina Anderson did a report on him earlier, linking him to the Jets, how they're in conversation. He hasn't really been around the NFL game for all that long. You know, it's a quick riser within the Lions organization. We've seen Ben Johnson scoop up a couple players a couple coaches from the Lions offensive side already. We've seen the Lions go outside the organization for John Morton. I would have actually considered him. I thought that would have been really cool to maybe bring him back.
But wouldn't that change but just not to cut you off, but just to say, like, the fact that all those things happen seems to be an indictment on him, though, right? He didn't get promoted. They went outside to get him, and Ben Johnson didn't take him. So wouldn't that be, if I'm being like the skeptic of all this, like why, like, right? Or they just assume he's go Aaron Glenn. Like, that's like, if you have that guy in the building, he doesn't. You're all right. It's an easy fix. He's already here. The players like him. They respect him. We know he can do it. You're the OC. We're good. Let's keep moving forward. That didn't happen. Ben Johnson didn't take him, and he doesn't have a lot of experience. Which to me, it's like that's where I'm like, it makes me really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be realistic with it all and try to talk about names that, actually like have been linked to the Jets. Like Todd Haley is a name that's popped up. I really would not mind that. Todd Haley's a super, strict guy. Hard ass coach.
But
he's experienced.
I forgot to mention this before. You mentioned this earlier, and it's a really good point, is also having these first time guys. You have some big time personalities on this offense. Not even saying Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, say Devontae Adams is still here. You have some guys that have some like edge to them where, like, if you start breaking out this schemer's play and these guys like, what in the hell is this? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have that resume, there's that room for questioning, which I know Aaron Glenn can keep under control, but that respect factor, that credibility factor may not be there right off the bat, which could be a concern. Then you add Aaron Rodgers to the mix. It's a whole nother, elephant in the room. So that's why I want a guy with a little more experience calling plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would prefer an experienced coach, someone who's done it before, someone who's called plays before, someone who's installed an offense for the first time and is not be overwhelmed. Like if Garrett is getting pissed because he's not getting targeted the ball, I don't want the coach to necessarily, I don't want players to be above the team or the coach, in other words, and I don't want the coach to feel overwhelmed. And quick side tangent, experience doesn't necessarily like translate. It immediately means we're going to get I mean, look at Hackett. He called plays in Buffalo. He called plays in Jacksonville. All those years,
terrible.
In Green Bay, Denver, and it was just, circus. So Todd Downing, a little bit better with Downing compared to Hackett, but it's another experienced guy, right? Going back to the Raiders, the Titans. So it's not just, if for example, if the Jets hire someone with 3 years of experience, it doesn't just automatically boom, they're better than every other candidate. I just feel like where the Jets are at right now, especially with an offense with a lot of young players, young left tackle, AVT, Brees, Isaiah Davis, Garrett, Braylon, Corley, Gibson, Titman, right? There's a lot of youth on this team. We'll see what happens with quarterback, right? Do they hit the draft? Do they hit free agency? I don't necessarily want more questions than answers from young players. I don't want there to be that's 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door. I want players to look at that coach and be like, this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy's done it before. If you're Garrett Wilson, he's worked with X wide receiver before in the past, and he's done a really, really good job there. So, I have some maybe more conviction. It's really just comes down to the buy-in. So, Todd Haley is an interesting name. I know we were just talking about Anthony Lynn getting fired, but when it comes to just connections, where Anthony Lynn is now, Washington, I think that's really, important to kind of bring up here. If he gets brought in for an interview, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I think the OC hire for me is a lot. I don't want to say it's more important than the DC hire, but it has my attention a lot. Like, I'm focused on this OC, maybe a little bit more so than the DC.
Oh, dude, OC and offensive line coach are huge for me. This offensive line coach has got to be legit and established to clean up all these guys and make them be the best they can be, especially Olu, who's got a bright future ahead of him. Tippmann can be a very good player as well. Like, you need that guy to clean all this up, man, because they were a complete mess last year. Didn't know what the hell was going on most of the time. They were lost on an island. And then you have the OC. Like, it's those are like the biggest focus. And then if you have that inexperienced OC, I'm real curious to see who the quarterback coach is, because you got to have a pipeline of guys on your staff that you can kind of hopefully promote when the guys start leaving. Like, you shouldn't want to go chase somebody else. Like, all right, you're next up, because you're all qualified to take the job. So I'm curious to see what his pipeline is going to be, and which is really important, because change happens every year in the NFL. You never know what to expect, and you got to be able to adjust on the fly.
So I have two names for two experienced veteran offensive names that coincidentally have worked together, but that I wanted to get your opinion on. But funny enough, the one coach, actually, like someone who I felt like made a lot of sense for that Jets OC job, just got scooped up by the Patriots, Doug Marrone. Another hard-nosed coach with head coaching experience, not going to be overwhelmed, from New York, background in offensive line play. I thought that would have been a great hire.
100%.
But, dude, by the way, man, New England's stacking up on their coaching staff, man. If Drake May takes another step, man, New England, I think, is going to be, speeding up this process of getting back to being relevant.
Vrabel's got this act together big time. Vrabel's prepared, man. He's low. You're absolutely right. And that's why I'm like, all right, that's what you got to contend with. You got the Bills are very good. Dolphins are very good. Patriots are on the rise. You got to be able to match that staff. So, all right, who's the other guy? Doug Marrone. Who's the other guy?
Well, no. So that was the guy who I initially was looking at. Like, hey, man, this guy makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I actually wanted the Jets to scoop him up last year. It's kind of that consultant role, because we were having a lot of issues early on with the O-line. But so the two names, Frank Reich, former player, kind of fits that Detroit Lions kind of mold. He's out there. I don't know if he necessarily wants to get back into the swing of things already. But I think it could be an interesting fresh start for him, depending on the quarterback position.
You know what? It's funny you read my mind. I like Frank Reich. He actually played for the Jets one year, but he, former head coach, very good offensive mind, been all around the NFL. He's a guy that's not going to lead right away after a successful year. He's probably a beer a little bit. Will be a valuable asset to Aaron Glenn as well. I think that'd be a smart hire. I wouldn't mind that at all, to be honest with you.
And because I don't want to look at that one half season, or that whatever it was, the 10, 11 games in Carolina, and be like, this guy's no idea what he's doing. Because those years in Indy, man, like he did some really good things on the offensive side of the football, with constant change to the quarterback position. But Doug Peterson was the other one. Personally, I feel like Reich is maybe the better option compared to Peterson. But where do you stand with Doug?
Another guy that's you're looking at we think about him as a failed head coach. But you got to look at him as how's he going to be as a play caller, and what can he bring to the staff and help Aaron Glenn with? He'd be qualified as well. Like I understand there's a lot of like the young guys. Oh, I want the guy from the Rams. I want this guy. Like I want the proven guy that has done an NFL offense. He's called plays before. He's been in big spots. He's been in the playoffs, been in the Super Bowl, been all these different things. That goes a long way for me, man. I wouldn't hate that either. Like I'm more conservative with my offensive coordinator than I am anything else. I just want a legit guy that it just makes me feel more comfortable.
What about Eric Bieniemy?
He's interesting because he hasn't really caught anywhere. He had that 1 year with Washington, didn't really work out that well. Seems to be a kind of a controversial guy, bouncing around. I mean,
I'm not completely against it. I'd be interested. Like I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of, hey, good call, Armand. We wake up tomorrow morning and we see the notification. The New York Jets have hired Eric Bieniemy to be the team's offensive coordinator. Thumbs up or thumbs down? What's kind of your...
I'd be like, all right, he kind of fits what we're looking for. He's got experience. He's worked with some great offensive minds. Doesn't really panned out, but he's experienced.
I think although he's a younger guy, I think Scott Turner makes sense because he has been linked. I was just looking to see if he had any more rumors kind of pop up because obviously the three guys that were named like the favorites for the Jets, Clint Kubiak,
he's gone.
Nick Caley, and Scott Turner, right? And Scott Turner is interesting because you have that connection to his pops and Norv Turner, who were both in Oakland or Las Vegas last season with Antonio Pierce. So, you kind of get, I don't want to necessarily say like two birds with one stone, but in a sense, you do get that, true veteran, like legendary offensive mind in Norv Turner. In the background kind of is like, maybe he's like the offensive coordinator in the shadows, right? Or like he's just that offensive consultant, right? That can maybe help along the way. I think that he would be totally open to sitting in the box, with his son calling a game. I don't, that's exactly what happened last season. We've seen them work together before in the past. I would really like Scott Turner. I know he's linked to North Carolina to maybe join with Bill Belichick. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think Scott Turner is interesting. I would like him.
Yeah, absolutely. Then North Turner is an excellent sounding board for Aaron Glenn as well. It's like an excellent resource for your entire organization. He can help you with a lot of different things. Just, hey, what about, time management, game management? How about this? How about like that's a really good resource to have in a building. And yeah, Scott Turner, I wouldn't hate that either. Now, what role does Aaron Rodgers play in all of this? I know Aaron Glenn said the right thing. He's like, listen, we're going to talk to him. We're going to figure it out. A lot of people are saying, you got to bring him back. It's your best chance to win. He wants to restructure. He wants to do that. Do you have any fear of bringing Aaron Rodgers back with a first-time offensive coordinator? Or is that a benefit where you can be like, you know what? He's a first-time offensive coordinator. I'll help him implement his offense. Or does he think he's going to have too much power again in the locker room? It's going to kind of offset your program.
It just depends, man. I mean, I thought Glenn gave the best answer, which is, we're going to make a decision in time. Me and Muji together. I would imagine the new OC too, whoever that's going to be. The three of them sit down together, watch every single snap, watch every single post-game press conference, every bit of information you possibly can about last season with Aaron Rodgers, and even going back to the Achilles, the first season, where he got hurt. Absorb it all, collect all that data, and just think to yourself, okay, you know what? Where do we go moving forward? Also factoring in the cap situation. If it was me, I would look to move on just because I'm looking at the new era of Jets football, new general manager, new head coach, new OC, new coaching staff, DC, everything's going to be brand new. If Aaron was 35 or 36 or something, I would say bring him back immediately. But because he's going to be 41, because he was banged up a little bit last season, because he's going to be expensive whether we keep him or let him go. But if we let him go, it's going to be a $60+ million cap hit in 2026 at this point. Now, if he takes a big pay cut, okay, maybe I'd reconsider. But I don't know, 41-year-old Band-Aid bridge quarterback for one season to potentially wreck the cap in 2026. That to me is a big price to pay for a 1 year. And then also, here's another point that we have to factor in, which is 100% realistic. What happens if we bring him back, pay him all the money this season, pay him all the money next season, And in week 3, he gets hurt. He's 41 years old. And how many stuff did he deal with last season with the ankle? I believe he dealt with a knee injury as well. Nothing to do with the Achilles,
Hamstring,
but it just, he had the heel issue going on in training camp. You know, what happens if he gets hit a certain way and boom, he's out 10 games. And now we owe him $60+ million in 2026. And we're rolling out Tyrod or Jordan Travis or a rookie anyway. I don't know. I don't want to live in, fear or anything like that. But I think that has to be up for discussion as well, which is, what's the durability level with Aaron Rodgers if we bring him back for a age 40 or 41 season?
Take the money out of it. Say he does the right thing and does another discount because he wants to keep playing. He realizes not many other teams are going to want him based on his age and his contract. But would you have concerns? Okay, he's getting $12 million this year. Just throw a number out there with all kinds of incentives. Would you be okay with that with the first-time offensive coordinator? Like, to me, it's like the personality, the aura, that the person that is Aaron Rodgers coming into this locker room now with the first-time play caller, could be his last season. He's going to want to put up numbers. He's going to want to win. Do you think there's extra pressure and extra burden on the staff to appease him and work with him? And is that unnecessary? Is that something you'd want to inherit as a first-time play caller, as opposed to a Frank Reich or Anthony Lynn? We're like, you know what? Come on in, boy. Let's go. We can do this. Like, do you have any concerns about that aspect of it?
I mean, I feel like the question has to be asked, I mean, like it would be like naive to not ask that question. And the last 2 seasons are a perfect example of why. Who was the OC? Nathaniel Hackett. Why was he here? The offense, first of all, the Denver thing was just a disaster to begin with. Then we bring him in. And then, you're trying to look at the positives, the optimistic side. Okay, well, if we do get Rodgers, okay, maybe it'll work. We're trying to look back. Okay, play calling experience, veteran, right? Son of a coach, trying to, pick up the positives. We go through the entire season, all the dysfunction, all the, putrid offensive line play that first year with Hackett, not or really forcing Zach to run the Rodgers offense, and just all these just weird things are going on. You have players frustrated last season. I feel like we didn't even bother stretching the ball deep. It was just all this short passing screens and it was just not a creative offense, really. Like we see Saleh get fired. We see Joe Douglas get fired. Somehow Hackett remains on the offensive staff because the Jets just did everything they possibly could for Aaron. Here's your system. Here's your coach. Here are the players that you want to play with. Lazard, Cobb, all these different guys. If Glenn wants Rodgers back, I want to see like guidelines in place. This is the offense that we're running. If you don't want to run it, then I don't think it's going to work out.
Yep.
If you want to maybe make adjustments at the line of scrimmage, cool, totally fine. If you want to maybe have, creative input or give your thoughts on how you would maybe change something, I'm cool with it. But if the OC doesn't want to do it your way, then you gotta roll with the OC, because I don't want the power structure to be the New York Aaron Rodgers. I like Rodgers, obviously future first ballot Hall of Famer, but and by the way, this is assuming he takes a big pay cut. So that's just kind of where I'm at. Aaron Glenn is in charge. Aaron Glenn's team. Aaron Glenn's the head coach. New voice, new vision, new everything. I don't want to be, and also another thing that I think is important to talk about, because it's the Jets, I don't want there to be other things in play, like ticket sales or merchandise sales or hype off-season stuff. Like, oh, well, Rodgers is the quarterback and Rodgers is, Hall of Famer. I don't want that to have any impact at all. So I appreciated Woody's answer when he said, hey, those guys can, make the decision by themselves, and I'm not going to be a part of it. We'll see if that actually happens, but I did like that self-awareness from Woody.
See, I think what Rodgers did is he put himself in a really good position by saying all the right things in the season. I want to come back to the Jets. I have a house in New Jersey. I'll take a pay cut. He put the ball completely in the Jets' court. Like, oh, listen, it's in their hands now. They can cut me. I've never been released before. That's fine. You played the game perfectly. Now a lot of fans want him back, like our best chance to win. My legitimate concern is
he did that in Green Bay too. He kind of would needle the Packers front office. He would needle the coaching staff. He would, take like small, subtle jabs. And then when everything was wrapping up, he just put the ball back in Green Bay's court. I love it. Everything. So,
but that's it's smart on his end because now you have the fans on your side. Oh no, he wants to come back. He's willing to do a pay cut. My concern is this team, which everybody hates this word, needs a new culture. You have a leadership change here where it's Aaron Glenn's way. My concern about bringing Aaron Rodgers back is, can he be the ultimate team player where he takes a step back and says, listen, this is the coach's way now. Like, because they put him on such a pedestal the last 2 years where they basically said, you save us, you do this, you gotta carry us any way you can, play injured, play hurt, play with one arm, one leg, we don't care. You're gonna play no matter what. We're gonna, just do it. To now saying now it's a whole different regime here now. So like when Aaron Glenn, he's hired, he wants to bring his own guys. You bring a couple guys from the locker room that has your lieutenants, your message guys, your captains, right? I don't want Rodgers being in the corner, kind of being that offsetting force. Can he be the ultimate team guy? Sits back and be like, listen, I'm one of 53. That's all I am. My way, their way is my way. I'm cool with it. I just want to win football games. Can he take that back seat and let Glenn impose his will and his program on this team? And I'm not so sure he can do that. And I'm not being a jerk. I just don't think he's ever shown he can do that. Because when adversity strikes, so you start losing a couple games, the offense isn't clicking right away because it's a whole new offense. You got to figure it out. He's got to learn a new system, which is going to be frustrating for him. He's got to make mistakes. Will he go through that with class, with professionalism as a leader and not offset what they're trying to establish within the building?
It's a fair question. I personally don't want to rule it out. I mean, Aaron has talked a lot about how being with the Jets has been like the best years of his life. Maybe he was just talking about the football years, but I don't think Aaron, because he said that continuously. I don't think he's lying in that. In that regard, I think he's actually really enjoyed, despite the losing and everything. I think he's actually really happy. I think he likes playing for the Jets. I think he wants to, wanted to be a part of the turnaround. So maybe at this stage, at 41, you kind of have that different mentality or that shift, right? I'm not going to sit here and say there's a 0% chance that Aaron won't be a team player.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. It's like I'm not discounting Glenn's power. I'm not discounting Aaron Rodgers the way his personality is. I just get those weird vibes where you're just trying to get a whole new message here, where these players have that sense of accountability and direction, and it's not getting offset by the other side of the locker room and like, oh, this offensive coordinator sucks. He can't do this. He can't do that. Like, you just don't want that. You know what I mean? It's gonna be fascinating. I'm curious to see how fast they make a decision too, where I know Aaron Glenn said, listen, we've already texted him. We've reached out to him. We're not going to string this out. We want to get it. We want to get this resolved quickly. And meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers said, you know what? I'm not deciding until March. So it's like, all right, that's kind of going to be a problem because free agency's around the corner. So I'm curious to see how the Jets handle this, how Aaron Rodgers handles it, and what the decision date would be. Because you got to figure it's got to be the next couple of weeks, right?
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, it's got to be by if it was me, I would say by the Super Bowl.
It has to be.
Because how can you let the quarterback position, all the money that's tied to Rodgers, like drag in a free agency in the draft? Like, that just cannot happen, because I mean, that impacts your plans, that impacts meetings. Like, you got to have a plan. And also too, from Rodgers' standpoint, like at some point the team has to be the team, I would say, and say, hey, we need to find a decision. So, this is the date, and you kind of have to have an answer by that point. I would guess. And I think too, like, another fair question to ask is maybe Rodgers would fit better on another team. There's a team out there in the AFC that has a quarterback question mark. Kind of feels like the coach is on the hot seat a little bit coming into the season, despite him being a great coach. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Could Rodgers maybe look at Pittsburgh and say, you know what, Tomlin, great coach, great defense.
Yep.
They got some weapons over there. You know what? Let me go maybe like team up. Like, everyone's kind of writing me off at 41. Everyone's kind of writing you off because you keep getting bounced in the first round. What is it? 0-6 in the last 6 playoff appearances. Yeah. Let's go team up as two guys that have won so many football games and, go make it happen. In fact, Rodgers actually beat Tomlin in the Super Bowl all those years ago, but, I think it was Tomlin. Yeah, it was Tomlin. But yeah, I think Rodgers, I don't think he's going to, like you said, I don't think he's going to sabotage the Jets. I don't think he's out here trying to manipulate things. I think he's just being honest and, I understand the decision of contemplating retirement or wanting to play. That's, you don't just go to sleep one night and just wake up with the answer. So I get it from that standpoint, but it's been 2 years and the Jets, it'd be one thing if Saleh was back and Joe Douglas was back, but it's they've moved on from a lot of people. Hackett won't be back. So if Rodgers wants to come back, I think he has to be on board. And if he doesn't want to be, or if he wants to run a specific offense, then maybe it's just not the best fit.
Yeah, and I want the Jets to be like stern about it. Like, here's our program, here's our plan. Or you in or you out. We need a decision by February 10th, or we're out. Like, and that's it. Because you need a backup plan. Whether it's Tyrod, Justin Fields, whatever, trade for somebody, whatever it is. You can't sit around and wait because you got a lot of catching up to do, because you got to get the quarterback and get your offense implemented as well. You got to start setting it up. All right, know what this guy can do, what he can't do. So it's going to be really interesting, man. And Woody Johnson said all the right things. Nope, it's their decision. But Woody Johnson also currently can't sell tickets. So I'm curious to see how this all plays out, because right now the Jets aren't marketable. Fans are excited about Aaron Glenn. Some fans aren't. But right now, like, fans want to see winning. They don't want to spend $200 a ticket plus $50 to park in a horrible stadium to watch bad football. So they've got to figure out how to sell this team, and Rodgers is the way to sell it for a lot of people. So I'm fascinated to see. Woody said the right things, but I'm just curious to make sure it actually happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that, dude. That's so much money to go to a football game.
Oh, it's brutal, dude.
So much money.
Brutal.
But also, too, man, like, I loved how one of my favorite things about the Muji and Glenn, intro presser. I loved how they talked about drafting, developing, not this quick fix. We're not gonna, just slap band-aids over the holes of the ship and just hope that everything just goes our way. We look at with the schedule, we look at with, guys staying healthy, and it's just cross our fingers. That's not how the Lions did it.
Yep.
That's not how Denver did it. That's not how these well-ran organizations do it. It's and occasionally it can work. Look at the Rams. They won the Super Bowl, kind of just trade for big name player, sign this guy, throw out money, trade first-round picks. It can work. But, if the Jets don't feel like they could win the Super Bowl next season, or at the very least win their, of course, you want the internal belief amongst players. But, if you're Darren Muji and we just saw a 5-win season, and yeah, you can, bring up the kicker and all the different issues that took place last season, but not a lot of people saw that stuff coming into the season, right? A bunch of missed kicks. For some reason, Aaron getting like way worse, like in crunch time, and just not being able to deliver. There was so many games last season where it was just like, what is going on? The Jets are just getting blown off the field in one way or another. Whether it's the 31-6 game in Arizona, the 40 to 16 or 40 to 14 game, the game that I went to in Buffalo. Like, that game was horrible. It was 40-0 at one point. Losing to Denver, losing to Minnesota, losing to Pittsburgh on primetime, the Patriots lost, right? Like, there were so many. Like, the Jets season kind of ended on a high, right? Beating the Jaguars with Mac Jones, scoring a lot of points, beating the Dolphins to end the season. So it left like a good taste in everyone's mouth. But like, to me, like, when I look at the entirety of the 2024 schedule, there were a lot of clunkers in there.
Yeah, but it wasn't exactly. But that's coaching, though. Like, to me, it's a lot of it was coaching. Like you could. I mean, me personally, I could say, like, if you clean up, you make this team a lot more disciplined, better coach, offensive line, scheme like that, you win 2-3 more games just based on that, because they were so sloppy and so disorganized, and they just didn't know what the hell they were doing. Like, you could literally see they were being outcoached thoroughly on both sides of the ball, and they couldn't even adjust to it. If you have a competent staff, then when you draft good players, they get better. Like, you have like Corley didn't even play this year, which is criminal. Like, you have young guys and you develop them. Now you develop them, they're well coached. If you have a half-ass coaching staff, doesn't know what they're doing, they're not going to get any better. You don't progress, and then you get fired. So that's where the key is here. That's where your pipeline starts. You get the player and you coach them with very good, disciplinarians, high-level technique guys that hold you accountable, clean up all your dumb penalties, get a good special teams coach, which you need now. And those are all wins right there.
Yeah, coaching definitely, that's easily the majority of it, but I'm not going to sit there and say it's all of it.
No, it's not
You
old,
know?
but there's a lot of times you're like, you have wide receivers running into each other. You're like, what is this? Offensive line can't figure out where the blitz package is coming from, like dumb stuff, dude. Where like there's
Yeah.
no way this is sound football. Fundamentally, they were a mess many times, but you also need talent too. You need safeties, the defensive tackle, all that stuff. But I think you can get a lot of impact this year by cleaning up a lot of your mess just internally.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't. I mean, the way I look at it is we get Aaron Rodgers. We're running his offense that he wants.
Oh no,
We're
nope.
keeping his coaches. We are signing his players. We're doing everything that he wants. And in one way or another, the Jets are coming up short, whether it's a missed kick, whether it's a poor game plan, whether it's not coming up clutch in the fourth quarter. There were a lot of drops, man. Like there was a lot of things. There was the lack of effort on defense was in question.
Oh, yeah.
The lack of like aggression and contact from a lot of players. And you can argue, okay, well the Jets are out of it so early. We're freaking 3-10. Are they really going to be, going full out, risking injury and stuff? That there are other teams that deal with that too. But
here's a name. I haven't heard this name yet. Jets call the Eagles to see if they can get permission to talk to Jeff Stoutland. I think he'd be an awesome OC.
Yeah, so I actually don't know a ton about Stoutland, but I see his name kind of continuing to pop up. I actually haven't been online the last day or two, really, but like outside of the Glenn presser. But yeah, I've seen his name pop up from time to time with potentially the Jets OC job. Not saying like Rappaport is linked the two, but just kind of Jets fans talking a lot about him. But the good news is I think there's actually a lot of options. For Jets OC, Kaylee, I feel like is kind of the one that everyone's been talking about. And then we had this massive shift because the Bucks, Liam Cohen was coming back, then he ends up going. Yep. So now the Bucks need an OC, and the Bucks are obviously in a great spot.
Yeah.
You got the defense, you got the quarterback, you got the weapons. You're in a quote unquote weaker division. Although I think some of those teams are going to get a little bit better in year two, but yeah, so maybe he's actually already interviewed for Tampa or for Tampa's OC job. So, that's where they got Liam in the first place. So, I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. I think the Jets can go in a bunch of different directions. I would prefer some veteran experience if I'm being honest, though.
Yeah, Mark Brunell is a guy that everybody keeps talking about. He's with the Lions, former quarterback, actually played with the Jets for a while as a backup. Not a first-time play caller. I didn't see anything that he said that he was staying with the Lions, though. But I also didn't see him. I didn't see his name as being interviewed with the Jets either, though. He's kind of. Have you saw more about them or no?
Well, like the way I'm kind of looking at it, too, so I haven't to answer your question, but I don't think Detroit is just going to allow because, bro, like everyone knew Ben Johnson was going to get a job. Mm-hmm. Everyone knew Aaron Glenn was going to get a job. Timing of Ben Johnson, okay, maybe a little weird, but like Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, Ford up top, like they all knew that this was coming at some point, that they would have to replace these guys. It's not like Liam Cohen, for example, one hit wonder, boom, you're taking charge over with the Bucks. Offense is flying, they're running the football effectively, they're scoring a lot of points, and he's gone. It's Detroit was prepared for this. Aaron Glenn was a finalist for Ben Johnson was a finalist for jobs 2 years ago. So I think Detroit is not Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes are not going to just look at the roster and say, see you, Ben Johnson. Congrats for the Bears job. Congrats, Glenn. You get the Jets job. Awesome. All of our coaches are available. Of course, money plays a part, title plays a part, obviously. But, with these two guys leaving, there's going to be an emphasis on Detroit to keep guys in-house, to maybe promote from within, to give them money. I think if it was maybe just like a, lightning in a bottle, Ben Johnson all of a sudden comes onto the scene and he leaves after one season, and now Detroit's scrambling because Ben Johnson's stealing or taking all the Lions coaches, that'd be different. But, Ben Johnson's taken Randall L. He's taken JT Barrett.
Yep.
The team goes external for OC, bringing in Morton, which I actually really like that move. I think Morton's going to do a lot of damage with that Lions offense. I just don't see. I think the Jets maybe get like one coach from the Lions. I just don't like. I mean, this is a 15 freaking win team last season. Are they going to let all their coaches go? When Glenn proposes an offer, when Ben Johnson proposes an offer, of course, that coach is going to run it by the Lions and say, hey, this is what I'm getting from the Jets and the Bears.
Yeah.
The Lions are going to have, I would assume, have a chance to match that. They promoted their O-line coach. He was kind of like a hot target. So I think it's going to be interesting, but I just don't see the Lions just saying, yeah, we're cool losing our OC or DC or quarterback coach or passing game coordinator, all our coaches, and then we're just gonna, leave it up to Kelvin Shepard and John Morton and just say, hey, you have to make up for not only just what Glenn and Ben Johnson did, but all these other assistants that are leaving as well. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting.
So do you think this time next week the Jets will have their full staff in place? OC, DC, and special teams coordinator?
Oof, full staff. I don't know. I think we will have our OC and DC though.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this too with Wayne Corbett. I think you're definitely going to see some former players, if not involved in the staff, they'll be here during training camp helping out, pitching in with a variety of different roles. Leon Washington, another guy. You could definitely see that happen.
We've actually seen Cromartie do that with the Jets, which I really like. This is, it's cool. I know Mangold has kind of talked about it a little bit.
No, dude, it's awesome. The more guys, the merrier, man. It's nice to see like that Jets pride return to the building where they want to be back in the building. They want to help out Aaron Glenn. They want to get this thing turned around. Victor Green's another guy that said he'd help out. I mean, why not? I mean, they're all very experienced guys, but just make sure you have a good coaching staff in place as well. So I think by next week, I think you're right. OCDC. I think you probably have all the coordinators in place, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but full staff.
Oh, full staff, probably not. Yeah. At least get your coordinators in place.
Yeah, I think the O-line coach is going to be big. That's the hire that I'm like, you know what? I want to dish out the cash. We got to go. We got to go land someone respectable.
No, I'm excited, man. It's this hour flew by. I can't believe it. I'm excited though. It's like it's a refreshing change, and now we got to see what his blueprint is. Like you got to figure when he gets hired, he had a list of guys that he wanted to bring on with him. Now it's a matter of interviewing them and getting here. And Woody Johnson spend the money, which has got to be a thing. You can't get cheap here. Especially coming to a job on the offensive side of the ball with basically no quarterback. That's got to be scary for a lot of guys. Where it's like, all right, you may have Aaron Rodgers, you may not. You may have to draft a kid. You may have Tyrod Taylor. We have no idea. So spend the money, bring the guys in, and let's see what we can do with this.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like if we look at how the Lions have kind of built their coaching staff over the years from the beginning, like, dude, when Dan Campbell was brought in, it was former players, hard-nosed, physical, kind of old school approach from the top down. And that didn't, now all of a sudden they're, fantastic. But the blueprint has been the same. Even when they were losing, the blueprint was the same. All these former players, both in the front office and in the coaching staff, it's pretty remarkable. And I think, and it's also a staff that's like really built out. Like if you go on the Lions website, or I don't know what it looks like now with everyone leaving, but last year, if you go on the Lions website, like it was just name after name after name, title after title, job after job. It was a huge, huge coaching staff.
No, it was. It's like I like those former players being involved, where the guys they can relate to the players, they can work with the players, motivate them, inspire them. You clean up their film study, get them in the weight rooms, a lot of benefits you can have by doing that. So, dude, this has been awesome. This is fun, a positive stream, no negativity, like a fun, productive conversation. We're embracing the future, so we can exhale a little bit.
What's your thoughts on Chip Kelly?
Why are you doing this to me, man?
Because the reports are suggesting that he's looking back to come into the NFL. He tried to get back. He quit the UCLA job to get back in the NFL. Didn't get a job, so he went to Ohio State. And
you just want to mention Ohio State. I know how you're working right now. You had to work in Ohio State just a little bit to get a little digging. Is that what this is for?
Bro, I texted you, man. I was going for Notre Dame. I'm not an Ohio State guy. I can respect him, but
come on, man. I don't want Chip Kelly. I'm pass on him. I'm just bitter. I'm angry. I don't like him. I think he's a jerk. But no, and I think I wouldn't even trust him to be in the same. I think he'd be angling the whole time. I'd probably take Aaron Glenn's job. I wouldn't trust him at all.
Yeah, supposedly there's like serious interest with Kelly to come back. I think the team that's been linked the most is Jacksonville. But I think from Kelly's side, it's like, no, I want to call plays, and obviously Liam Cohen's going to be doing that. So I don't know. It's turning into, what are the teams out there that are going to need like a full-time OC that needs a system, that needs a play caller, and the Jets obviously fill, that checklist. So I don't think it's going to happen, but
So Nick Haley, apparently Bucs offensive coordinator job. He's scheduled to interview with the Texans on Thursday.
Yeah, it's another team in the in the mix here. I don't know what's going on with Dallas too. I don't know if they're gonna promote from within or are they gonna reach out.
Brian Schottenheimer, boy, that is a wild one. I can't even. I get flashbacks of anger when I hear his name. Just boy,
I think when I think of Brian Schottenheimer, I think of the Sanchez 3-step drop back slant pass to Holmes and Braylon Edwards, excuse me, going for just TDs in 2009 and 2010.
I think about him screwing up in the championship game. I think him about ruining Christmas Eve against the Giants. I can name endless games he pissed me off. I hate that guy. It gives me I get rage when I hear his name. And the hiring as a head coach is wild. What's funny is they weren't hiring as a head coach years ago. He was like a highly touted guy for a while there.
He was in Seattle.
Yep.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting. I think, the good news again from the Jets perspective is okay, the way you can sell it is you don't need to build this offensive lineup. We don't need 2 years to find the left tackle, to find the running backs, to find the wide receiver one. I mean, we can knock out right tackle, tight end, and wide receiver depth in one off season.
Yep.
And then maybe focusing on quarterback in 2026, or you can try to find that guy this go round. I don't think the Jets are going to fill all their holes immediately. The one name that I really want the Jets to target in free agency on the defensive side of the football, someone who I think that they could get for pretty cheap, and someone who's only 24 years old, is Javon Holland, the safety from Miami. He played at a really, really high level early on, kind of dipped down a little bit, but I mean, man, I think he'd be an awesome fit as kind of that, center fielder, free agent, free safety addition that this team freaking desperately needs. I personally, I don't see the Jets spending a ton of money at corner because I just, with the Michael Carter contract, the Gardner potential contract, are they going to bring in like a Carlton Davis and pay him $13 million a season? No, probably not.
I don't think so. I'd bring back Eccles.
Stiggers, maybe. I'm thinking Will Johnson, bro, from Michigan in the first round. And that way you could have two potential CB1s and then one of the best slot guys, and you have Will Johnson on a rookie deal.
Funny you say this, Baylor. I'll be on this channel next week at 7 o'clock. We rotate every week. My channel, his channel, my channel. So we go back and forth. So we're going to be 7 o'clock on his channel. I love Wink Martindale. I absolutely love Wink Martindale. But I don't know if Glenn would go that route. But this defense would be off the rails because they would be nasty and physical. That would be wild to watch. That'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, I love Wink. I just don't know if the philosophies are going to completely mix. With how Michigan runs their defense and how all those years with Baltimore. I think Wink could go to Dallas. That's a job and just have
that makes sense.
Isolate Micah Parsons, give him just tons of opportunities to rush the passer and just impact the game. But DC, man, I think we're both in agreement. We want some experience here with either one of these coordinator spots or both.
Yep, 100%. Well, we'll wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for joining us. A positive, productive conversation today. No arguing. We'll argue when the things start going bad, when they start making weird hires. But thank you guys for joining us next week on his channel. Obviously, you know who he is, Jet Central. We appreciate all the support, all the feedback, and we'll talk to you next week. And I loved Aaron Glenn the way he was like, we're ready for this shit. I was so happy for that dude. That made me so excited.
Dude, yeah, man, that was, bro. I think I literally stood up during that. I'm like, yo, let's go. That's cool.
Talk to you guys next week.